For weeks, missiles lit up the skies across the Persian Gulf. A 38-day offensive, launched by the United States and Israel against Iran, pulled an entire region into a high-stakes conflict. Cities were hit in rapid retaliation, and borders seemed to blur as international panic peaked. But even as these dramatic airstrikes unfolded, the real pressure point wasn't in the skies. It was at sea. The most powerful weapon used in this entire campaign wasn't a sophisticated missile or an autonomous drone. It was a narrow, jagged stretch of water known as the Strait of Hormuz. When this global shipping corridor suddenly froze, the world didn't just feel a minor supply chain disruption. The global economy held its collective breath. Oil prices immediately surged. Shipping logistics ground to a halt, and critical supply chains stopped dead in their tracks. This isn't just a random waterway. It is the absolute key artery of the modern global economy. And in this conflict, it was weaponized to absolute perfection. To understand the immense power of this choke point, you have to understand its unique geography and shape. The Strait of Hormuz sits tightly between Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south, connecting the isolated Persian Gulf to the wide open ocean. But here is where its structural leverage truly lies. The actual shipping lanes inside the channel are only about 3 kilometers wide each. The passage is so narrow that every commercial vessel has no choice but to sail directly through Iranian and Omani territorial waters. There are only 2 corridors, one leading in and one leading out, separated by a razor-thin buffer zone. Before the outbreak of this war, roughly 20 million barrels of crude oil passed through this bottleneck every single day, representing a staggering 1/5 of the entire global energy supply. It is not just oil moving through this gap. It is liquid natural gas, essential fertilizers, raw aluminum, and critical manufacturing components. Giant economies like China, India, and Japan rely on this route as an absolute physical lifeline. And when that lifeline is abruptly strangled, the macroeconomic shockwaves instantly go global. The terrifying reality is that there are almost no viable alternatives. The pipelines designed to bypass the Strait toward the Red Sea and the Gulf of Oman can only handle a combined 6 to 9 million barrels a day. That is less than half of what the Strait of Hormuz handles on a normal morning. It is not even close to enough. This choke point isn't a man-made design. It was forged millions of years ago by massive tectonic forces. The Arabian tectonic plate collided directly with the Eurasian plate, pushing up the massive mountains of modern-day Iran and creating a deep depression that filled with water to become the Gulf. That same ancient geological accident also trapped one of the largest concentrations of oil and gas on planet Earth, right behind one of its narrowest maritime exits. For centuries, whoever controlled this passage controlled the flow of global wealth. History proves it. In the 1500s, the Portuguese seized the strait to extort global trade. In the 20th century, Britain blockaded it to control Iranian oil reserves. During the 1980s, it became a literal naval battlefield during the Iran-Iraq War. The Strait of Hormuz has never just been about simple geography. It is the ultimate form of strategic leverage. On the 28th of February, the unthinkable actually materialized. The physical flow of oil effectively stopped navigating through the Strait of Hormuz. When the physical supply of energy stops, the financial illusion that governs global markets immediately shatters. Oil prices skyrocketed, and retail gasoline prices dutifully followed, pushing United States gas prices back toward peak levels not seen in years. But while everyday consumers fret over the rising cost of filling up their personal cars or the threat of canceled holiday flights, the true economic devastation is hidden deep within the commercial sector. The much bigger, far more dangerous story is the catastrophic global shortage of diesel. Diesel fuel is the absolute lifeblood of the global supply chain, and its price has risen exponentially faster than raw crude oil. At the height of the crisis, diesel began trading at a staggering premium of $64 a barrel, more than crude. Why does this specific premium matter so much? Because when regular petrol prices rise, everyday consumers have the option to simply cut back on travel, cancel road trips, or stay home. But when diesel prices soar, corporations and logistics firms have absolutely no alternative. They simply have to pay. Every single good transported to a supermarket, every massive piece of heavy machinery operating in manufacturing, and every tractor utilized to plant and harvest crops relies exclusively on diesel power. We are not yet in an era of long-haul electric lorries. The economy runs on diesel, and right now, the infrastructure to refine it is crumbling. Over recent years, there has been a systematic reduction in global diesel refining capacity, especially across the United Kingdom and continental Europe, making this sudden supply shock infinitely worse. We are already witnessing the devastating, real-world physical effects of this shortage rippling across the globe in bizarre and alarming ways. In Japan, popular consumer snacks are currently being printed in black and white packaging because of a severe shortage of naphtha, a crucial derivative of oil used in industrial printing. In parts of Africa, the situation is far more dire. Local farmers literally cannot afford the fuel required to plant their seasonal crops. Across Asia, massive queues have formed at petrol pumps. India, a massive importer of crude oil and gas, saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi go on national television to plead with consumers to voluntarily reduce travel, avoid purchasing gold, and work from home. Eerie echoes of the pandemic-era lockdowns. This extreme surge in diesel, jet fuel, and vital byproducts like sulfur is directly baking massive future inflation into the core of the global system. Surging diesel and fertilizer prices are projected to trigger a massive jump in food inflation over the coming 12 months, with cumulative food inflation set to reach a devastating 50% since 2021. The domino effect has already begun at the wholesale level. Producer prices have aggressively jumped to 6% in the United States and 5.4% in the United Kingdom. This wholesale pain will inevitably be passed directly down to the consumer, and history shows us exactly how consumers react when absolute necessities become unaffordable. When food and heating prices aggressively rise, populations do not simply eat less. They immediately slash spending on discretionary non-essentials. They cancel restaurant reservations, cut back on luxury goods, and terminate monthly subscriptions to streaming services and artificial intelligence platforms. The entire service economy is placed at risk. Despite bullish tones from the United States administration, with officials framing high prices as just a transitory or temporary period, the cold, hard reality is setting in. You cannot simply talk your way out of physical energy shortages. A central bank possesses the immense power to print trillions of dollars in fiat money, but absolutely no one can print oil. When inflation surges from a profound energy shock, central banks are effectively trapped, forced to watch as their traditional monetary tools fail against physical scarcity. This unprecedented commodity shock has simultaneously backed the world's most powerful central banks directly into an inescapable corner. Historically, when inflation surges, central banks respond by increasing interest rates, utilizing higher borrowing costs to cool down an overheated economy. But raising interest rates does not magically refine more diesel, and it certainly does not safely navigate massive oil tankers through a mine-filled maritime strait. Instead, this monetary policy simply crushes the everyday consumer. Households are forced to absorb skyrocketing physical prices at the supermarket, significantly higher mortgage repayments, and mounting credit card debt, all while real wages fall. This toxic combination of rising consumer prices, colliding head-on with slowing economic growth, is the absolute textbook definition of stagflation, and it is a nightmare scenario for policymakers. As the crisis deepens, heavily indebted Western governments find themselves entirely constrained. Today, they are effectively trapped by the unforgiving reality of the global bond market. Because when inflation goes up, institutional investors demand significantly higher bond yields to compensate for their risk. This aggressively pushes up the baseline cost of borrowing for sovereign nations. According to analysis by the Resolution Foundation, this specific crisis is projected to cause United Kingdom government borrowing to surge by well over £12 billion every single year. The United States is watching its already massive budget deficit widen as political pressure mounts for emergency actions like cutting the federal gas tax. The bond market now hangs ominously, like the sword of Damocles, over heavily indebted nations, making their jobs significantly harder as central banks actively sell off massive bond portfolios. Certain sovereign nations are inherently much more vulnerable than others. Unfortunately, the United Kingdom finds itself uniquely exposed to this brutal oil and gas squeeze, largely due to strategic historical missteps. During her short premiership, former Prime Minister Liz Truss managed the controversial sell-off of massive national gas storage facilities. While many developed nations maintain secure oil and gas inventories to weather precisely this kind of geopolitical storm, the United Kingdom not only sold off its critical gas storage, but has also systematically given up on maintaining crucial domestic diesel refineries. When you entirely surrender your domestic physical infrastructure, you become totally reliant on the mercy of global choke points. Furthermore, industrial experts are currently warning that liquid natural gas prices do not even fully reflect the coming global shortages. Qatar, the world's leading exporter of liquid natural gas, has seen its critical exports severely curtailed. This guarantees a devastating knock-on effect for countries completely relying on imported gas to set their baseline electricity prices. Yet, despite this looming macroeconomic catastrophe, Wall Street appears entirely detached from the physical reality of Main Street. Global stock markets have remained incredibly resilient, aggressively shaking off doom merchants and completely ignoring the physical supply chain crisis. This bizarre market optimism is being largely driven by a massive, concentrated rise in United States corporate profits and the absolute explosion of artificial intelligence stocks. We are currently living in a profoundly dangerous two-speed economy. On one side, we have soaring, record-breaking share prices driven by speculative technology investments. On the other side, we have plummeting consumer sentiment, massive physical shortages, and crippling regional tariffs, such as the massive 50% import tariff currently crushing United States automotive manufacturers desperate for raw aluminum. Modern digital economies have proudly operated for decades on the fundamental assumption that cheap, abundant physical energy will always be readily available. The sudden, weaponized closure of the Strait of Hormuz is a brutal, terrifying reminder that it simply isn't. If this selective maritime toll system becomes the accepted new normal for global trade, the worldwide economy will fundamentally shift. It will not matter how advanced our software technology gets or how many billions flow into artificial intelligence agents. The absolute truth remains that the modern world still relies on and fundamentally runs on physical commodities. And as this crisis has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, whoever strategically controls the physical choke points of those commodities ultimately controls the financial future of the entire world. If you want to stay ahead of the global macro shifts that the mainstream media completely ignores, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications for Geo-Capital Vantage, because understanding the intersection of geopolitics and your money is no longer optional. It is survival. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on this crisis. and we will see you in the next breakdown. Thank you for watching.